Heard daily on Bible School Radio 91.3, KDKR, Decatur, Dallas-Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC, Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, as a leader, are you all in? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, as a leader, are you all in? Well, author and consultant Lisa Danels is here to discuss what it means to be all in. She is the author of The Human Edge Advantage, Mastering the Art of Being All In. Lisa, welcome to Prudent Money.
Great. Thank you, Bob. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
You know, I was thinking about our talk today, and I was thinking about events that have happened that have totally changed the landscape of, finances, of culture, of many different things, forcing changes in the way that people go about things. You know, we had the financial crisis in 2008 was a big one. Of course, the pandemic and COVID, that was huge. I think about that this has got to create an urgency of change amongst leaders, but at the same time, I would imagine that more people are fighting the change versus going with it. I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond leaders, and I think that's what's so exciting is that, you know, when we talk about are you all in, it's not just about how the leader needs to lead differently, but it's also how the employee needs to show up and how they need to take ownership and step into their personal power and self-author their life. Like one of the things I think of, you know, when you talk about prudent money, you think about, wow, if people just understood compound interest, you know, we would have a lot more people being well off in the world, right? So we have to take ownership of what we want to do in our lives and show up in a different way, and that's one of the key concepts of the book.
You know, in the title of the book, what do you mean by being all in?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's really composed of three key areas. The first one is about self, really connecting to yourself and integrating every single part of yourself. And what do I mean by that? I mean, do you have that self-awareness to be able to master the interactions you have with people in your life? Do you have that ability to self-author? And can you unlock your own potential? And we do that. One of the ways we do that is by mastering our mind, mastering our emotions, and knowing we have this incredible destiny of shaping our own lives.
You know, let's talk about one big change that has occurred, which I am shocked is still going on, which is remote working. You know, how do you advise companies? I know that you do a lot of that. How do you advise companies to adapt and accept what appears to be here for good?
Yeah, so and this really speaks to the second part of being all in. So thanks for that little intro. The next one is around connecting to others. And when we work in offices, we're so used to it. We have a real privilege of being able to grab a coffee with someone, go to lunch with someone. So that need to connect in a meaningful way is so much easier. And when leaders are remote, it requires leaders to be much, much more attuned to how they hear the words somebody says, or can they sense if somebody's stressed out, or do they have something personal going on? So we need to make an extra added effort for that personal connection. And when you have people joining on a Teams call where there's multiple people, the chance for chit-chat actually feels awkward and uncomfortable. So we need to, you're laughing, right? But we need to find ways, because it feels like you're a little bit in that, what was that old game where everybody on the TV was in the squares?
I know what you're talking. I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Right, and it feels a little bit like that. So we have to put a little bit extra effort in to be able to do that, because people want to authentically connect. And what's really interesting, when I wrote the book, I came across some interesting research that said we're really having a loneliness epidemic, which really started before COVID. The COVID made it worse, where 33% of the world population is feeling alone and isolated. And we can't connect to other people until we connect to ourselves. And a lot of people, we're so busy with social media, and of course we all do it because it's what we do now, that sometimes we forget to how we're feeling, what's our emotions, and then that allows us to connect to other people. But we need to spend a little bit time more with ourselves and less with our devices.
I know that connection is key, but how do you prevent that feeling of seclusion from setting in, that feeling of being disconnected from the company, from the purpose and the vision, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So one of the key elements is really making sure that as a leader, you're creating a sense of belonging and psychological safety where people can step in. That's one of the key areas. And one of the things that it's really strange, and it sounds so simple, but for leaders, they really need to care about their people, right? So let me give you just a quick example from my own life experience. So in the fall, one of my colleagues was getting married, and it's a super exciting time for somebody. And she's so organized, and she had everything done beforehand, and she went to go get her first dress fitting. And when she went to go pick up the dress, she realized that the place where she bought her dress was out of business. And there was a little place next door that said, "Oh, we'll give you the dress, but we need you to pay for it," without trying it on, without proper fitting. This is just not how it works when it comes to a wedding. And sure enough, she was in tears. The dress didn't fit. No one was taking accountability. So she, when I spoke with her on the phone, because she works virtual, it was the first time that I gave space for her to express how she was feeling, and she just literally broke down in tears. And and it's just this moment of caring where I said, I validated her experience and her emotions, and then I said, what you need to do tomorrow to take care of the dress, because the wedding was only 1 month away.
You write about.
Go
ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, so we underestimate the caring, because once I was able to just listen to her and hold the space for her in an authentic way, then she was able to very quickly figure out how to get the dress to work. In the end, it did work for her, and the other people did help her get the dress fixed. So she had a beautiful wedding, and she looked amazing. But that's part of being caring. Like, I could have been like, well, I don't care about your dress, and you just need to get your work done. And some leaders do act like that. But if we want to make people go the extra mile and be all in, then we have to put skin in the game as leaders. We have to care about the people that work for us.
Lisa's book is called The Human Edge: Advantage, Mastering the Art of Being All In. You can get more information by going to human-edge.com. You write about the importance of being courageous. Talk about what you mean by courage in this context, and as well as, Lisa, why leaders have kind of a natural fear of being courageous.
Yeah, I don't think it's just leaders. I think it's actually people in general.
It is.
So the interesting word is, if you go back to the Latin, the word courage really comes from cor, which means an open heart. And in order to live our lives with an open heart, it requires us to really step into who we are first, and then step out into the world to be courageous and really not be afraid of judgment, not be afraid of other people telling us we're going down the wrong pathway. So it requires a lot. So I talk about, in the book, I talk about these 6 leaps of courage that you need to do. And the first one is letting go of judgment and accepting. And a lot of that is we judge others because we judge ourselves so harshly. So that's one. The other one is we need to confront our shadow side. All of us have had challenges in our lives. It's part of the human experience, but we need to look at what are the parts of ourselves that we want to hide and we don't want to show people. Then we need to, once we understand what those shadow sides, we need to take off the mask. We need to say, okay, this was a great coping mechanism from childhood, but it doesn't help me anymore to be my best self. And then the other thing is to pursue what really matters, right? What is it like? not what you want to do or what other people tell you to do, but can you bring your superpowers to really make a difference in the world? And it doesn't have to be on a massive scale. It could be in your community, in your neighborhood, in your company. But we have to think about what do we care about and how does it tie into our purpose. And then we need to be uncomfortable. And people don't like being uncomfortable. So we have to dare to be uncomfortable. And the last one is we need to dare to care. And that is really, so this notion of being courageous is, are we comfortable, or can we step into our own skin? And do we even know what that is? Because we get so socialized by everyone around us about who we should be or what we could be, rather than really taking that time to dream ourselves.
You know, you talking about being uncomfortable, you write about how we spend most of our time in our comfort zone and not take risks. Mm-hmm. You also write that we need to be 80% in our comfort zone and 20% in your what you call stretch zone. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the 80% in your comfort zone is where do you feel really strong that you can contribute and you have great capability. And then the 20% is what's uncomfortable, but it's still with the right encouragement and the right effort and the right focus, you can grow and develop in that space. Because I don't want people to feel like they're so far out of their comfort zone, it feels like a car crash every day. Like I was coaching a woman one time, and she took a new job, and she was 60% out of her comfort zone. And she was so burnt out by the end of the year. So we have to be careful that we're stretching ourselves because that will allow us to continually to grow. But we don't want to go into what we call the fear zone, because the fear zone, what it does is it creates a response in the brain, and then our brain narrows and we can't function well. So it produces what we call an amygdala hijack, and then we can't even use the gifts we have. So we want to make sure we're finding that right stretch where it's like arm's length away, but it's still not super scary.
Yeah, and that's why I brought that up, because I think it's very important to put in some emphasis on this, because so many books authors will write and talk about you need to get completely out of your comfort zone, and that's just never felt right. And I like
it's not right.
I like the concept of 20%. I think that's a great concept. The name of the book is The Human Edge Advantage: Mastering the Art of Being All In by Lisa Danels. If you want more information, human-edge.com is where you would go. Okay, here's one that I really wanted to ask you about, because it's an interesting dynamic that we're starting to see play out. And, of course, in the book, you talk a lot about human connection. How does artificial intelligence fit into your thesis of being all in?
It's such a great question, and it's such the topic that so many people have been asking me that recently. And, you have to think of AI as how does it enhance your own capability, right? Because there's an explosion of AI tools right now that I actually think can put us back in our personal power if we use it correctly. Like, for example, if you think about ChatGPT, right? Well, if I use it correctly, I can be more productive. I can maybe, if I'm trying to do something on the side, it allows me to fulfill something that's very personal to me. So I think what we have to be careful of is that AI doesn't dehumanize us. So this is the one thing we have to be careful of. So one of the things at Human Edge that we've been talking about is how to use artificial intelligence to actually help people accelerate and grow. And when my team was exploring it, one of the things I said to them is, I don't want you to even touch things that dehumanize. Like, for example, Amazon was using AI to fire people. And I said, I'm not interested in that at all. So I think this is where we have to be careful that we want to use AI where it can help enhance us. Like, for example, Microsoft Copilot, right? They say that it can save you 1 day a week. Now, wouldn't you like to get that back? Because I don't know about you, but I would like to replicate myself and have one version going to the gym, the other version working, the other one out on the ski slopes, right? Another one traveling, right? As long as they just have to sync together so that you're not fragmented. But I think that's really the key, and I think we really are on a very unique position. Like, if you asked me 6 months ago about AI, I would have told you, oh, I'm so glad I'm towards the end of my career and I don't really want to deal with this. But then I'm being really honest. And then I started really digging in and listening to some of these podcasters who started talking about it. And then I got super excited.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another interesting aspect of the book is, you're talking about really a change of leaders who change the way they do things. They connect with their employees. They show more emotion. And I was just thinking, there's the old, we'll call that the new model. The old model is get the job done. I don't care about what's going on in your life. I want you to work 16, 18 hours a day, and that's just it. Those are pretty hardcore CEOs, leaders, managers. I mean, how do you, as you come in and you talk to a company, how do you get somebody to shift that paradigm? Because that is pretty ingrained.
It's pretty ingrained, well, you know what's shifting it? I will tell you what's shifting it is that leaders in the past, with more of what I call the power over model, which is dying, is that is where few people have power, and then with the few people that power, they usually have power over information and knowledge. And the challenge is leaders today can't know everything. The world is changing too fast, and they have to rely on their experts now. They have to rely on their people that are high professionals and who are very good at what they do. And this is what's changing it, because the last part of the All-In, which we didn't quite finish, but now I can close the loop on it, is really about this co-creating possibility, that we have more challenges ahead of us that we don't know how to solve than we do know how to solve. So by being able to get the collective wisdom of the teams, then we can create new solutions and new possibilities. So I think leaders are starting, I actually feel that leaders have started to shift, at least some of the more, I would say probably up till 50, late 50s. They're already in that mindset. I think it's more of maybe the next generation up, but they're exiting the workforce. So I don't worry about that so much.
Yeah, the way I look at it is it's a process. And
it is a process.
Yeah, so you say leaders need to share power and employees need to embrace it. Talk a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, so if I'm going to share power, it means I'm not going to make all the decisions. So a great way I think about it is I call it setting the frame. So leaders who know how to do this well, they set the frame, which is what do I want you to explore, what's in, what's out. And then once I set the frame, which is the parameter of where I want you to play and experiment, then I let you fill in the frame. And that's really the most powerful thing. And the leaders that I work with, a lot of them, that's a very new concept to them about setting the frame. So, because then if you know your playground, then it's easy to, because a lot of people get disenchanted and disappointed. And I know that when I worked at one particular company, we had this new project, we get all excited, and then it would really fall away, and then we kind of had to restart. But if we're really clear on what that frame is and establishing the boundaries, then it's super exciting for people, because then they can bring their creativity. And I think the big difference is that people are so used to wanting to shine themselves that we use this concept, and I use this concept in the book called bring a brick, not a cathedral. But we always so want to shine that we want to bring the whole solution, and then there's really no place for other people to add to it. So it's really important that we play that each person is bringing something unique, which then creates something that none of us expected in terms of a solution.
It's really interesting. You talk about a leader making a real impact in alleviating stress and anxiety among their team members. I mean, there's a lot of stress in the workplace. Yeah, I mean, I would think you've got to be extremely intentional about that, going through that process. How do you advise a leader to do that?
Well, one thing is that we forget as leaders that people are watching us at all times. And
Yes.
in order for us to be a role model for that, we need to be what you mentioned, intentional. We need to be intentional about don't watch what I say, watch what, it's that old saying of Simon Says, right? Don't watch what I say, watch what I do. And I think this is really an important element. And one of the key concepts here is, some research that was done by Arthur Brooks, which is about happiness and about bringing more levity into the world, into the business world, because I feel like sometimes we get so serious, right? And I was just working with a leadership team, and it was really one of my favorite leadership teams to work with because they were having so much joy and fun together. And the thing is, when we think about resiliency, right, resiliency comes from authentic connection, right? So if you think about, Bob, the last time you spent time with someone that you really enjoyed their company, your emotional cup gets filled, right?
Right.
So that's one element. So team leaders need to leave time for team members to connect because they will work hard, but they need to make sure that is a key element. The other key element is they need to set some boundaries. Like I know some leaders who try to work on this, they will set their emails that they don't go out on the weekends because then that sends the wrong message to team members. I remember I had one boss when I worked at American Express, and it didn't make a difference how early I got into the office. Even if I got in at 7:30 in the morning, there were 3 voicemail messages from my boss. So that sense, I'm not kidding you. And I was like, oh no, come on. I'm up before the sunrise in New York, and there's still 3 messages from her. So I think these are some of the things that are really important in terms of having the teams be much more renewed. And I think the other one is we need to really get the teams that we work with revolved around purpose. So it goes to Simon Sinek's work, which is, what is the why? Especially the younger generation, they really care about this why. They want to know they're having a meaningful impact, and they just don't want to make widgets anymore.
The name of the book
and they have different options. I felt like I didn't have a different option. I couldn't go create an internet business if I wanted to.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think there's a way more options than people even know that's in front of them that they could take advantage of. And that's exciting. The exciting thing about change and how change can be good. The book is The Human Edge Advantage: Mastering the Art of Being All In. Lisa, congratulations on your book, and thank you so much for coming on Prudent Money.
Thank you. Oh, I've had such a great time speaking with you, Bob. Thanks so much.
Thank you. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. It's really interesting when you think about it, about how much change has occurred since COVID, since the pandemic. I was just thinking about even going back as far as the 2008 financial crisis. Of course, I bring that up every once in a while because there's a lot of change that did become of that. And was so very important, and I think especially today with what's happening in the workplace and I meant to ask her, and I it slipped my mind, is what does she think the future of remote working really looks like? And I know that many people I've talked to through the last couple of years, they love the idea of working from home, and it works out well for them. I think there's just so many different dynamics that it presents, to the point that you have to manage different, you have to lead different, and that's exactly what Lisa's book is about: The Human Edge Advantage: Mastering the Art of Being All In. More information on the book, you can go to human-edge.com and get more information on Lisa's book. But it's definitely, things are changing, especially when you start talking about artificial intelligence and all that process. This is Bob Brooks. If you had a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.